If I sound slightly different, I have a bit of a cold. You know, that sort of sinus issue that you get with that. One of my subscribers, and I don't think he'll mind me name checking him here, Declan, you mentioned that you had a cold or something, and there appears to be something going around. It may be because I had this a few weeks ago, and usually in my case it comes and goes, but here it is again. It's pretty frustrating because it's not painful, it's just distracting. So, yeah, if I sound slightly different, that's the reason why. This is just a brief one. I want to cover a story I read in the Eye. I have a little bit of a newspaper backlog. One thing I would like about the Eye newspaper is they do this panorama thing, which focuses on stories that wouldn't necessarily get mainstream attention from around the world. It's a little bit like what The Economist does. The Economist calls itself a newspaper, although it looks more like a magazine format. So there's reports here from the United States, Turkey, China, France, India, the Philippines, Italy, Malawi, Pakistan, and Guinea. It's just a roundup of world news. But I'm going to read out this one from China because I think in the international discourse, the sort of collective amnesia around the world, or that's what it feels like, about just what the Chinese Communist regime put the world through in 2020 to circa 2023. I am convinced that had they dealt with the pandemic, had they dealt with COVID immediately, treated it like the deadly virus that it was, and contained the situation, rather than punishing whistleblowing doctors, then it might well have been contained. Instead, because of their failure to be transparent and their paranoid reaction to doctors trying to talk about the issue, it became a globalized pandemic. We know what happened when anyone tried to talk about having an inquiry into that. Beijing lashed out at Australia and threatened to destroy their wine industry, despite the fact Australia simply asked for an independent inquiry. Didn't even blame China. We'll probably never know how that occurred, whether it was a wet market or a lab leak. We'll probably never really know. But make no mistake, millions died. Millions. The deadliest pandemic, certainly since AIDS, but over that sort of period of time, because AIDS has spanned over a longer period of time, really since the Spanish influenza or the 1918 flu epidemic. Anyway, pandemic, I should say. This is related to that subject. Government extends jail term for COVID journalist. The reports by Claire Jim and Jesse Pang in Hong Kong. A Chinese journalist jailed for 4 years, not a suspended sentence, jailed for 4 years after documenting the early phases of the COVID-19 outbreak from its epicenter, has been sentenced to 4 more years in prison, Reporters Without Borders has said. Zhang Zhan, 42, was sentenced for picking quarrels and provoking trouble in China, the same charge that led to her December 2020 imprisonment after she posted first-hand accounts from Wuhan on the early spread of coronavirus, the international press freedom group known as RSF said. She should be celebrated globally as an information hero, not trapped in brutal prison conditions, RSF Asia Pacific Advocacy Manager Alexandra Bielakoyska said. Her ordeal and persecution must end. It's more urgent than ever for the international diplomatic community to pressure Beijing for her immediate release. Zhang was initially arrested after months of posting content, including videos from crowded hospitals and empty streets, that painted a more dire early picture of the disease than the official narrative. Her former lawyer, Ren Chuanyu, said Zhang believed she was persecuted for exercising her freedom of speech. China's authorities have never publicly specified what she was charged for. This is typical of a totalitarian regime. They will never say, the Communist Party will never say, she's in jail for her opinions. So they'll make up these sort of euphemisms, for picking quarrels and provoking trouble. I mean, that is so abstract that it's absurd. But this is what happens to genuinely independent journalists in China, to whistleblowing doctors, to anyone brave enough to tell the truth that may well embarrass the communist regime. So I'm just putting it out there for information. This is the report. Of course, she should be freed immediately, but that, it's a thug regime, and this is why it sits on easily with me when people sort of hail the Chinese government in any way, shape, or form when it's doing this, because you'd think this woman was some sort of dangerous criminal. All she has done is tried to be transparent on what the situation really is. But Xi Jinping and his thug regime are terrified of the truth getting out. So, I have huge respect for her. If I had the financial means to do so, I would definitely be a supporter of Reporters Without Borders. Yeah, so that's the truth of the Chinese Communist regime. So, around the world, there's a lot of other things going on. There's Israel and Gaza, there's Trumpism, there's Russia's aggression in Ukraine, and there's the war in Sudan. There's a lot of things going on. I don't think China should ever be allowed to forget how it handled COVID, how it lashed out at whistleblowers, how it got into vindictive campaigns against countries that simply wanted transparency. Millions died because the Chinese regime lied. That's a fact, including 250,000 people in this country. So I hope Zhang Zhan is not in. I hope her conditions aren't too brutal, but it's an absolute disgrace that this woman is being treated like a dangerous criminal, held in a prison, when she should indeed be applauded for her efforts. So any Chinese nationalist who claims there's free speech there, yeah, give me a break.